This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Pornography charges. A Halifax youth is arrested for participating in an online violent extremist group.
Riding reaction. What Becky Druin's Lunenburg West constituents think about her becoming an independent MLA.
And heated rivalry. A fictional love affair between two professional hockey players becomes a TV series.
Well, the skies remaining mainly cloudy on Wednesday. Couple of isolated showers and watching the remnants of Melissa for the Friday forecast. All the details are coming up.
Good evening. A warning tonight from police to parents to watch what their kids are doing online. It follows the arrest of a Halifax area youth who's facing child pornography charges.
Police say the youth is part of a violent extremist online group. Blair Rhodes reports, and a warning, some of the details of this case are disturbing.
They groom these children for months and manipulate them into doing what they want.
Sergeant Pollock is with the RCMP's Internet Child Exploitation Unit, or ICE. She says a youth, part of a violent online group called 764, is facing charges. She says the group's purpose is to cause chaos.
At this point, the RCMP has not classified them as a terrorist group, although nationally, transnationally, it is in many other countries.
Police say they do not believe any of the victims were from here in Nova Scotia, and they won't say whether the accused was themselves a victim in the past.
At this stage of the investigation, there's nothing to say that they were a victim, but through the course of how this network works, victims can be groomed to then become a predator online.
Police got their first tip back in May. This is the first case of 764 operating in Nova Scotia, but not in Canada. And they say one of the worst things is where the gang operates, out in the open.
The users of platforms such as Discord, Telegram, Minecraft, Roadblocks, all of these are where all of this telecommunication begins.
Police say parents should be mindful of the fact the gang uses such common apps to ensnare their victims.
If you have a child or youth on any app with a chat feature, I urge you to learn more about these groups and how they operate.
Blair Rhodes, CBC News, Halifax.
A man in his 80s is dead after a multi-vehicle collision in Cape Breton this morning. It happened near the 1600 block of Lingan Road in River Ryan around 8 a.m. Cape Breton Regional Police say 3 other people were taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. The cause of the crash is still under investigation.
Hurricane Melissa slammed into Jamaica Tuesday afternoon as a powerful Category 5 storm. It's the worst to hit the island nation in recorded history. Nova Scotians in Jamaica are feeling the storm's wrath. I reached Phil Rock, who's from Bridgewater, earlier today. Hi, Phil. So what are conditions like there right now?
It is crazy windy. The winds, I'm in the grill where it's coming off the ocean, and the wind is incredible here. I'm technically in the tropical storm zone, but you wouldn't know it. I think we still have, 100 to 120 kilometer an hour winds here by the looks of it.
Well, how are you feeling and what are you doing to stay safe?
I'm in a huge 3-story concrete house built by a friend of mine. I'm house sitting his house and his dogs while he had to go to the States and say goodbye to his mother. So I said, well, you have to do that. So I'm here to keep his dogs and his house safe. And more importantly, more of the dogs. I'm feeling fine. The house is safe.
What does it look like out your window?
Some of the trees are sideways. There's a lot of the softer trees down, banana trees and things like that. Prior to the storm, I took down a bunch of the coconut trees on the property just because we didn't want to really arm the winds with projectiles. So those have been taken down. I've taken down branches on top over our water tanks. So we're ready.
Well, overall in Jamaica, how do you think the infrastructure is going to hold up, once all of this storm passes?
It's not going to hold up. The Prime Minister has already gone on record saying that the majority of the infrastructure will not survive a Cat 5, an extended Cat 5. The water system's fairly robust, a lot of steel pipes. The electricity system is frail on the best of days. I lost power last night at about 8 o'clock in the evening before the storm even started. And the Prime Minister has said it's going to be rebuilding, not repairing. So that's going to be at risk. The phone service here, it's mainly cellular. It's incredibly robust, but it's a recent installation. There's lots of backup power.
All right. Well, hopefully you keep the power, and please do stay safe. Thanks for taking some time to chat with us.
No problem. Call anytime. I've got nothing better to do than sit here.
All right, making the best of a bad situation. Some incredible imagery from Jamaica. And
we're feeling some of the impact here with the wet weather, right?
Yeah, Friday is going to be tied to Melissa. Just how much of that rain on Friday we see will be tied to the storm is still a little up in the air, and we'll get to that in a sec. There is Melissa. It is now a Category 4 storm, again, making landfall as a Cat 5. Then it goes over Jamaica, becomes a Cat 4. The question is, how much will it strengthen before it rolls into eastern Cuba tonight? As it goes back over the water, it may re-strengthen to a Category 5 again. That's one of the things we're going to be watching, and it will be a big storm for eastern Cuba as well. In terms of how this all works for us, well, we've got some cloud cover from a separate system overnight into Wednesday, Thursday, also some variable clouds, and then here comes that front. The front is already going to have some rain, already going to have some gusty winds, and Melissa, again, will help to funnel some moisture up into this front. Questions in terms of how much rain and the timing. Will we clear for trick-or-treating time? More on that coming up with your 7-day.
Details on the way. Thanks so much, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Well, there's a mixture of support and curiosity in Bridgewater today as people there react to yesterday's surprise news from their MLA. Becky Druin announced yesterday she's leaving the PC caucus to sit as an independent, citing differences in principle. Preston Mulligan was in Bridgewater today and has this report.
Here in downtown Bridgewater at Becky Druin's office, the signage remains the same, but what's changed is that the former Attorney General with an office here was just shuffled out of that job and has since left the governing party entirely. A difference in principle maybe, but what actually happened, no one here seems to know.
It sounds like she didn't leave of her own accord, and it sounds like they're trying to consolidate power all in one office, that being the office of the Premier.
Did you vote for her?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Would you vote for her again as an independent?
I don't know. Let's see what she has to say. I guess go from there.
If she doesn't agree with what's going on, then with either party, then that's her choice, her prerogative. She has to make her own decision, and a decision that will satisfy her mind.
Druin says her plan now is to, quote, represent the constituency with integrity and dedication. Some of these constituents say that's easier to do at the cabinet table.
Does it matter to you that your MLA is no longer in government, that suddenly she's now an independent?
It does in a way because, independents, how much power are they going to have to be able to push to get things done?
Well, maybe she'll concentrate on the, like she says, on the local constituency now rather than being provincial minister, so maybe it'll be good for us, maybe it won't.
Yes, but as a non-cabinet minister, she certainly doesn't have the clout to get the constituents' voices heard at the top level.
Even after losing Druin, the Houston government still has 42, or 3/4 of all the seats in the legislature.
It really doesn't affect anything. I mean, they've got a vast majority of government, Houston, and they're fine with or without her.
I think she should have stayed where she was because, well, it's a seat gone.
No word yet on whether Druin will run for that seat in the next election. Preston Mulligan, CBC News, Bridgewater.
And still with politics, PC MLAs used their majority on a legislative committee today to vote down an opposition motion to recommend the government not remove or alter the protected status of any designated coastal protected area. Liberal MLA Ian Rankin says he brought forward the motion because of concerns the government cannot meet its legislative targets and the renewed talk about a potential golf development within West Mabou Beach Provincial Park.
The targets were put in place. I don't think they ever realistically knew if they were going to be able to reach them. And now they have to do work that they didn't do in 5 years in just 5 months. So I think as we get closer and closer to that target, we'll know even more about their lack of interest in protecting the environment.
Government MLAs on the committee said they're committed to the conservation targets, but won't shut the door on opportunities for the province.
There are more delays on the delivery of a new ferry between Nova Scotia and PEI. The federal government promised the ferry would be ready in 2027. That was later pushed back to 2028. Now the delivery date is unknown. PEI MP Kent McDonald says he's struggling to get information on when the new ferry will be delivered.
So I can't predict a timeline. I would feel a lot more comfortable once they start welding steel in the factory to say, okay, this is the year that the ferry will be delivered. And otherwise, I'm just guessing.
Transport Canada told CBC that a delivery date will eventually be discussed with the shipyard building the ferry. And an exact delivery timeline and cost will only be known once all contracts are finalized. Well, a Halifax author is making a splash with her best-selling series of hockey romance novels. Her most popular book, Heated Rivalry, is also the subject of a new television show.
But it has one big twist. It's a romance between two male NHL stars. Andrew Sampson reports.
Imagine a world where the two best players in the NHL weren't just rivals. They were truly, madly, deeply in love with each other. If that sounds impossible, don't worry. Halifax author Rachel Reed has done the work of bringing it to life for you.
I guess I was just being hopeful.
Reed's novel, Heated Rivalry, soon to be a TV show, follows a Canadian NHL player who begins a star-crossed romance with a Russian rival that threatens to change both their lives and the game forever.
This is such a bad idea.
The books are sexy and often quite explicit, but what makes Reed's work transgressive is how she writes men's professional hockey players who are still able to be out and thrive at the game they love.
There's a lot of times that sport has broken my heart that had nothing to do with what was happening on the ice. So I think the books are kind of like a little bit therapeutic for me and a way of kind of pushing back a little.
The NHL has been operating for more than a century, but an openly gay player has never taken the ice. In 2021, current AHL player Luke Prokop became the first active player under NHL contract to come out as gay, but he's yet to play in the league.
Shooting and scores!
The You Can Play Foundation, which works with the NHL to improve hockey culture for LGBTQ players and fans, says change is happening.
Even 10, 15 years ago, 0 players were wearing Pride jerseys, and even if one wore it, it was the biggest win we could ever imagine in our lives. And now all these players are wearing these jerseys. That's such a huge and massive win for the movement and for inclusion within hockey.
In the past decade or so, there's been a grassroots movement across Canada to create spaces for LGBTQ hockey players to play the game, free of the toxicity that often accompanies it.
The Halifax Muscles gave people like an avenue for players to return to the sport. Some had never tried it, but some had like kind of got scared out in high school or university, and it basically gave them the courage to get back into it.
Some of these new players are even fans of Reed's books.
Something I appreciate about Rachel's writing is that the queerness in the hockey just exists. It just allows us to examine what men's pro hockey would look like should that visibility exist.
Reed has fans from around the world who send her mail and share their passions online. But her work is poised to reach even more people when Heated Rivalry premieres next month.
I think in Canada especially, it will be hard to ignore this story, this show. It's going to be talked about, and I'm sure that it's going to get a lot of pushback too, and I'm fully prepared for any backlash it might get.
She knows the very idea of a show about two male hockey players falling in love will be met with some skepticism. But if even one person watching learns to accept that queer male hockey players exist and they're not going anywhere, that's a win. Andrew Sampson, CBC News, Halifax.
There's a look at the Halifax skyline. Ryan is up next with his full weather forecast. Stay with us.
This weather update is brought to you in part by Atlantic Lottery's iGames. Play hundreds of games on the Atlantic Lottery app or at alc.ca.
All right, gotta admit, I've been kind of looking down the pipe of the week to see what it might be like Halloween night, and I'm sure I'm not the only one.
I know, it's a tricky thing. We need the rain, but you just want a little break for the kids, right?
It's like the one holiday where we have to be outside, right? So
can we make it work somehow?
Can we make it work? And yeah, listen, it is a little, I'm a little more optimistic tonight that, the western parts of the province will see some clearing, but it's going to be like the details of this, like 3-6 hours is going to make a big difference. And we're this far out still. But we'll hone in on that a little bit more. First, let's talk about the rain that did fall. And yeah, boy, nice to see some of these totals, especially across the northeast of the province. That's where we had the most substantial shots in the 20 to 40 to 50 millimeter range. Spanish Ship Bay with local amounts there of 100 millimeters or just shy of it since Sunday morning. Not so much in through the southwest. And so, leaving us wanting more there. And so we'll hope you folks get into the mix next time around. Behind that system, boy, the winds have been doing their thing today, haven't they? Sustained near 20, 30 kilometers per hour, some gusts 40, 50 kilometers per hour. Starting to taper off a little bit, and we're going to see those winds remaining in the mix, but not quite as strong as they have been today. Single digits on the board for most, some double digits still hanging on here in the south and west, and that cloud has been again in the mix today. And looking at this system that's driving to our south from west to east, and that cloud cover on the northern edge, that will do battle with this area of high pressure. I do believe that that cloud will remain in the mix for a good chunk of tomorrow across the southwest half of the province. Here's the cold front we're going to be watching in the coming days. There's Melissa, and basically Melissa kind of works its way northward, and that's why we're watching the potential for that moisture to funnel up into that front. Overnight lows tonight are going to be 4 to 7 degrees for most. We'll see the winds from the northeast continuing, as I said. Perhaps as cool as 3 degrees for north and eastern areas of the mainland. So it is going to be a cool start to Wednesday morning. Note that that cloud will remain in the mix more so in through the southwest, as I said. Can't rule out a couple of very spotty showers tomorrow along that south shore. That's where we'll have at least the potential for a little bit of isolated shower activity, mainly throughout the afternoon. And note here across Cape Breton in the northeast, I think this is where we remain a mix of sun and cloud tomorrow. It is going to be a brighter sky overall, 11 to 12 degrees. Winds from the northeast as we move back into central. Again, more sun towards the north shore, cloudier toward the south and west. Those northeast winds 20, gusting to 30 kilometers per hour. Temperatures ranging between 10 and 12 degrees here as well. And in the west, those northeast winds will be strongest here, gusting to 40 kilometers per hour, especially along that Atlantic coastline where we could see a couple of those drops of wet weather. Now for Thursday, 13, 14, 15 degrees. Temperatures on the increase. The winds in from the east. We are going to be looking at overall a pretty quiet day. Forecast models doing some battling on just how much cloud will remain in the mix. I do think overall it's going to be sunny breaks, but the clouds could dominate a little bit more than the sun does. So here's that setup again for Thursday night in through Friday. So this front itself is already bringing wet weather with periods of rain likely to be significant. And then the winds are going to be from the southeast and, along that front is where we're likely to see the strongest winds. As the rain comes down, the winds are going to be strongest, gusting 50, 60 kilometers per hour, maybe some gusts to 70 as this front comes through. Then, again, the question is how much of this moisture makes its way up in. Either way, we're expecting it to be wet Friday morning, Friday afternoon. But as I said, looks like Friday afternoon into Friday evening, we'll start to see that gradual clearing. Becoming more optimistic that the Tri-County, the Valley, the South Shore will see some clearing in time for the trick-or-treaters for Friday evening, say supper time and beyond. Halifax up towards Truro, central areas right on the border here. I'm less optimistic for you folks in Cape Breton and the Eastern Shore. I think you folks should be preparing for some wet weather. We should all be preparing for some wet weather. As I said, a few hours is going to make or break this. Clear garbage bags always work well. The costume can remain unchanged underneath. Showers and windy conditions lingering into Saturday, and that wind ushering in A very November-like feel, which, by the way, the first weekend of November, and the clocks change on Sunday. Just to
that's a lot.
Yeah,
It's a lot this weekend, isn't there?
For sure.
All right.
Appreciate the wardrobe tip, by the way. That's a real
Thanks,
veteran.
Ryan.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Well, a week ago, Tim Houston shuffled his cabinet, and while the dust has been settling, reporters Taryn Grant and Michael Gorman have been learning what they can about why.
And as the Premier takes on the energy file, a lot is at stake.
Premier Tim Houston shook up his cabinet, and what most people have been paying attention to is that he made himself energy minister.
More good paying jobs, greater energy security. Let's make it happen.
And we'll get to that. We'll talk about the reasons he did it and what it signals about the direction Nova Scotia is heading. But first, let's start with the latest news, which is that Becky Drouin, former cabinet minister, has stepped away from the PC caucus and is sitting as an independent.
Yeah, Drouin was one of 3 cabinet ministers who lost their portfolio last week in that shuffle you mentioned. The other 2 were former Energy Minister Trevor Boudreau and former Natural Resources Minister Tory Rushton. Drouin, in an interview on Monday, told us that she was offered another portfolio, but she declined, and she's not gone into great details about her motivation, other than to say there was a difference in principles between her views and the views of leadership. Now, she's not saying if leadership is a euphemism for Premier Tim Houston, or if it's a euphemism for his inner circle, or all of the above. But the point is that when MLAs come back here sometime in the new year, Drouin will now be sitting as an independent MLA, no longer a member of the PC caucus.
Now, when it comes to Tory Rushton, he hasn't made such a dramatic move. He's still in the PC caucus, now sitting as a backbencher. It's not entirely clear why he was booted from caucus. He's been a very competent cabinet minister since this government came into power in 2021. Same with Trevor Boudreau. He wasn't a cabinet minister consistently since the PCs came into power, but he has been in cabinet off and on, and there's no clear reason why he would have been taken out of cabinet entirely. However, it is clear that Houston wanted the energy portfolio for himself.
Well, and that may be what resulted in Trevor Boudreau being on the outside looking in. The Premier, in a lot of ways, has been handling the energy file for months as it is. He's been a big proponent of offshore wind development. More recently, he's talking quite a bit about offshore petroleum development. He's talked about onshore petroleum development. He's talked about mining for critical minerals. But there's another thing at play here, and it's that the province is facing some major financial challenges. And so in that regard, perhaps it makes sense to have the Premier as chief salesperson on this.
On the other hand, what we've heard from the opposition in particular is that it's not great to have the Premier in charge of this very important portfolio because it consolidates power within his office. Also, there's good reason that a Premier appoints cabinet ministers to handle the details of a portfolio. He has a sight on the whole picture, the big picture of where he wants his government to go. Houston is now going to have to become more well-versed in the details of that energy file and not just the big picture of what he wants Nova Scotia to do with its energy resources.
Much like the way he spent time both in opposition and once they first formed government, selling the public on a vision to fix healthcare, making the point that he needs time to make that happen. I think we're going to see the same thing with natural resources.
Now, our Prime Minister wants Canada to be an energy superpower, and I do too.
The economic boom that came as a result of population growth has dried up mostly. Natural resources is the best new opportunity to fill that gap, but it's going to take a long time, and the Premier is going to need to find a way to convince the public to be patient while he tries to get that file moving along.
Coming up, as the cost of living continues to climb, Nova Scotians are relying on food banks more than ever. A new report on food bank usage shows 43,000 Nova Scotians visit a food bank, up more than 10% over last year. And almost a quarter of them are employed, a new high. Ash Avery is the executive director of Feed Nova Scotia with us now. So a big jump in the number of employed people coming to you this year. What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, so a number of things that we have learned through this year's hunger report, and particularly here in Nova Scotia, as you said, we've learned that, um, you know, a number of folks that are accessing food banks, 24%, are their primary income is employment. So that's up 14% from 2019. And we also know that 71% are renters. So what this indicates is that the cost of living is just far too high. People cannot keep up with it. So folks who are employed are not able to make ends meet due to the rising cost of living. So whether that be housing, utilities, food, etc.
Yeah, so anecdotally, what are those clients telling you about what their lives are like? I mean, obviously, reaching a level of desperation where they feel a food bank is the best option for them.
Absolutely. So food banks are intended to be a crisis resource that folks can turn to when something happens in their life where they need to turn to a charitable organization for that support. However, what we're seeing now is that food banks have become normalized. They are they're a place that folks are turning to every single month to be able to try and fill their fridge and their cupboards with food to feed themselves and their families. And we know that people are having to make very difficult choices between paying their bills or buying groceries.
And obviously, it has been the case for some time. Others going to a food bank, a large percentage of them are on social assistance. What is the gap that they are experiencing?
I mean, the top reasons that people are giving is the cost of food. So 44% of folks who were part of the hunger count here in Nova Scotia provided that reason, the cost of housing and utilities. So Nova Scotia reports the highest attribution to the cost of living pressures across the country. So that is something that as Nova Scotians, we should be particularly alarmed about. And for folks who are on social assistance, we know that the rates of social assistance are just not keeping up with the cost of living either. So again, these are folks that are becoming reliant on charitable organizations like food banks to be able to meet their fundamental, what we would argue here, human right to access food.
All right, so the rates of usage are up. Are your donations keeping pace?
Unfortunately, no. So here at Feed Nova Scotia, the donations of food have declined over the past 5 years, and there are a few reasons for that. So one of the reasons is that more Nova Scotians are experiencing food insecurity themselves or are very close to it. So they're just simply not able to donate to charities as they were in the past. We also know that, grocery stores are trying to do their best to reduce waste and therefore not able to provide as many donations to food charities. So unfortunately, what's happening is that food insecurity continues to rise, donations to charities continue to decline, and so we're really at a critical moment here where our province and our country really needs to look at this issue and bring solutions that are going to alleviate this issue.
The Houston government did index income assistance payments, tying them to inflation. Is that helping? Are there other things that need to happen?
Certainly. So here at Feed Nova Scotia, we provide over 6 million kilograms of food to over 140 charities across the province to alleviate hunger in communities. But a big part of our mission is to partner to create systemic change so that this issue doesn't exist in the first place. And there are certain areas that are priorities for us, income being one of them. So, as I said, too many Nova Scotians simply don't have enough money to afford basic needs. So wages, social assistance, and disability supports are all really falling below the cost of living. And, we know that's why folks are turning to food banks. So our advocacy asks would be to, reform employment insurance, strengthen provincial income supports, implement a basic income guarantee, raise minimum wages to a living wage standard. So recognize that nearly 1 in 5 Nova Scotians who are turning to food banks are employed. And as I said, 40% of food bank clients in Nova Scotia rely on provincial income supports. So, regardless of, any changes that have happened in the last few years, we're just not seeing, a big impact in that area.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Ash Avery of the Feed Nova Scotia, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming up, Hurricane Melissa makes landfall in Jamaica, bringing widespread damage and killing several people.
And Prime Minister Mark Carney is in Asia, promoting Canada as a reliable trade partner amid tensions with the U.S. Welcome back. It could be days before the full extent of Hurricane Melissa's devastation becomes clear in Jamaica.
It slammed into the Caribbean nation as a powerful Category 5 storm and left a trail of destruction in its wake. The CBC's Chris Reyes reports.
As Hurricane Melissa made landfall on Jamaica's southwestern coast, the images were terrifying, and so were the warnings.
It will cause catastrophic damage, life-threatening damage. There is very little that can stop a Category 5 hurricane.
Let's not romanticize this, right? This is 175 mile an hour sustained winds, a 17-foot storm surge, and 30 to 40 inches of rainfall in parts of the country. There will be flooding and there will be infrastructure damage. We have 70% of our population living within 5 kilometers of the sea in generally low-lying areas. So the risk of flood is extreme.
At Category 5, Hurricane Melissa is the strongest storm to hit the island in 174 years. It made landfall just after 1 p.m. Eastern Tuesday. The satellite image shows the eye of the storm moving over the island, affecting a population of 2.8 million people.
We're getting videos of and pictures of severely damaged public infrastructure, hospitals, places of safety. Homes are inundated and flooded. So it is having the effect that was projected.
Already, there are reports of widespread power and internet outages, as well as storm surge, flooding bridges. St. Elizabeth Parish on Jamaica's southwest coast took a direct hit. Before the impact, officials issued this advisory.
Everybody in Jamaica needs to be in their safe place. Stay indoors. Do not go out when the eye crosses over. There will be a period of relative calm, but with the forward speed increasing and the very small size of the eye, winds will pick up.
The United Nations is prepping to airlift supplies into Jamaica with 2,000 kits ready to go as soon as airports reopen, according to officials. Hurricane Melissa weakened slightly to a Category 4 storm as it passed over the island nation and heading north, where Cuba is bracing for a hit. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
Prime Minister Mark Carney is traveling across Asia this week, where he's trying to diversify Canada's trading partners. But it's Ottawa's strained relationship with our oldest and closest economic ally that's overshadowing talks there and dominating concern here at home. Rafi Boudjikanian has more.
While Prime Minister Mark Carney is in Singapore trying to sell Canada as an ideal trading partner for Southeast Asia, Canada's actual biggest trading partner continues to ignore him. The White House stopped trade talks with Ottawa last week. U.S. President Donald Trump upset over that Ontario TV ad, which shows part of a speech by former President Ronald Reagan criticizing the idea of tariffs. Ontario has since pulled the ad, but Premier Doug Ford has defended it and said Carney should hardly have been surprised by its use.
He saw the ad before I put it out, so did his chief of staff. They both saw it, and we moved forward on it.
Carney and Trump are on parallel pit stops between two major summits in Asia, while Carney is here trying to meet with officials of a private equity firm as well as Singapore's massive port authority to get them to invest more into Canada. Trump is in Japan, where he met the country's new prime minister and signed a framework agreement on rare earths and critical minerals. Canada also had its eye on Tokyo during this trip, but Japan said it could not fit in 2 state visits right after an election, according to Canadian government officials. However, Canada's ambassador to Japan says that should hardly be interpreted as a snub.
We were at ASEAN for the full 2 days. We're here in Singapore. We're going to APEC. And, we'll have lots of opportunities to do a full, comprehensive bilateral visit to Japan.
Carney heads to South Korea on Wednesday ahead of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, where Trump is also expected to be in attendance. Rafi Boudjikanian on CBC News, Singapore.
Donald Trump is set to meet with Chinese leader Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the APEC summit Thursday. Many analysts believe the trade and tech war unfolding between the U.S. and China is really about who will control the development of artificial intelligence. As Chris Brown reports, Taiwan makes the bulk of advanced chips for AI databases, and the stakes couldn't be higher for the island nation.
This science park south of Taipei is devoted to making some of the most delicate and expensive technology on the planet. The microchips that facilitate artificial intelligence, phones, and almost everything else we use.
Taiwan is the leader of the world's semiconductor industry, and it especially dominates in the manufacture of high-end chips, with one company, TSMC, holding 90% of the global market.
It's an astonishing accomplishment for a small island that most of the world doesn't even recognize as a country. And people here are proud of that success. We don't have to worry too much now that people don't care about us, said 21-year-old college student Amy Lin. We have wafers, microchips, so we have something to negotiate with others. And Taiwan is flexing its new economic muscles, threatening South Africa with export controls over a diplomatic dispute, and standing up to U.S. demands to move half of its chip-making business there.
You cannot ignore Taiwan anymore.
Analyst Jeremy Chan says advanced chip technology, especially for AI, is very expensive and has taken years for Taiwan's engineers to refine.
So it become very, very efficient. I think only Taiwan can achieve this kind of standard of efficiency.
But China is trying. Min Wu of Macronics, a pioneer of chip production in Taiwan, says he believes with its huge resources, China's industry is catching up.
My guess, they are very close now. They are very close.
Taiwan faces an existential threat, though, from China, which has vowed to reclaim the island by force if necessary. So analysts say for Taiwan's government, the challenge is in deciding how to turn its success with chips into political leverage. Chris Brown, CBC News, Hsinchu, Taiwan.
Tech giant Amazon says it will cut 14,000 corporate jobs from its operations around the world. The company says it wants to reduce operational layers to limit costs as it increases investments in AI. At the end of last year, Amazon had more than 1.5 million full-time and part-time employees. Out of that total, its corporate workforce was roughly 350,000. Amazon has been carrying out job cuts in its books, devices, and services divisions in recent months.
It is now Game 4 of the World Series, with LA Dodgers leading the series 2-1. The Toronto Blue Jays are hoping to turn the page, of course, after Monday night's heartbreaking loss in a marathon 18-inning game. The CBC's Jamie Strachan has this recap from Los Angeles.
11:50 in Los Angeles.
As the clock approached midnight, Freddie Freeman did what nobody else was able to do.
High fly to center.
End a game that will be forever remembered.
Game over.
Every pitch means something in the World Series and in the playoffs. So I think we're all emotionally and mentally drained.
For the Dodgers, pure joy after surviving the 6-hour and 39-minute marathon, the second longest game in World Series history. For the Jays, a feeling of what might have been.
This one will sting tonight, don't get me wrong. You wouldn't be human if it didn't.
But no sense that Game 3 will define this series.
The Dodgers didn't win the World Series today. They won a game. You know what I mean? And these guys are going to be ready to go tomorrow.
Nothing like a 14th inning stretch. And that's
this wild game that saw 19 pitchers take the mound and 130 at-bats went on and on and on.
Or how about when he wakes up? Yeah, been asleep for 9 innings.
And had a little bit of everything. Sparkling defense.
Barger's throw to the plate. Got it! Hit down the line, a fair ball.
Dramatic plays at the plate.
The throw is offline, and he is safe.
And yet another jaw-dropping performance by Japanese legend Shohei Ohtani, who hit a dramatic game-tying home run and reached base 9, that's right, 9 times, a World Series record. Oh, and by the way, he's the Dodgers' starting pitcher in Game 4.
That game set to be played here at Dodger Stadium, where temperatures are set to soar over 30 degrees. You would think both teams are exhausted. Not likely, this expert says.
I'd be surprised if the athletes weren't more energized by having gone through this. This is a career-defining game that they experienced last night.
The good news for Jays fans nursing a baseball hangover from last night, a win today evens up the series. Hopefully, it won't take as long. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Los Angeles.
What a night. The Toronto Blue Jays' first World Series run since 1993 is lending fresh sizzle to an iconic 40-year-old song.
That's right. The CBC's Magda Gabrisalasa brings us the colorful history of OK Blue Jays and gives us a taste of the new renditions.
It's that catchy baseball tune that revs up fans in bars,
Okay! Okay! Blue Jays!
in schools,
Let's play ball!
and in the seats at Blue Jays games during the 7th inning stretch. You may know the words, but did you know the tune got its start in 1982?
You got a hat?
Jack Lenz and business partner Tony Kozanek co-wrote commercials, but then they got called up to take a swing at a theme song for the Blue Jays. Thing is,
Neither Tony nor I had ever been to a baseball game. Sports was not our thing. So we were definitely music nerds.
but they were up for the challenge. Before coming up with a game plan, then Blue Jays executive Paul Beeston gave them a tip.
I remember so clearly him saying, you know, we're only 5 years old. We can't promise too much, so just say they're okay.
The pair tapped into the sights and sounds of baseball.
You got a diamond, you got 9 men.
And within one afternoon, they had their tune. Called to bat as lead singer was Keith Hampshire.
Yeah, it's very catchy, very clever, very clever. Well, when I first heard the track, I thought, this sort of sounds like a Randy Newman song, and I love Randy Newman.
Sold as a record, in 1985, the track went gold, reaching 50,000 sold. The shorter version, chanted at games, continues to delight. It's even getting updates from fans like the Arkells' Max Kermit.
We call him Vladdy. Yes, he's a baddie.
He's not the only one giving the song a new twist.
We'll beat the Dodgers so bad it'll make LA blue.
No doubt Jays fans are hoping that comes true. Magda Gabrisalasa, CBC News, Toronto.
This weather update is brought to you in part by Atlantic Lottery's iGames. Play hundreds of games on the Atlantic Lottery app or at alc.ca.
Lots of Halloween decorations out there. Neighborhoods are getting remade, aren't they? Yeah, they sure are.
And
you might want to strap them down for Friday. Anything that you really care about, perhaps bring it in.
The inflatables,
the inflatables for
Flying
sure.
Ghosts.
Friday, as that rain comes through, it is going to be coinciding with those intense winds that will likely gust 50, 60, maybe 70. We'll hone in on that over the next couple days. A quick look at our viewer picture of the day. We're going to go to Sydney. And this is a beautiful shot, the Member 2 walking trail and Rosemary Woods. And seeing a lot of this lately, right?
Bed of leaves down. One tree
some
has
on the tree,
none
some on the ground.
And one tree has lots left.
Some hanging on.
Yeah, some hanging on.
For sure. Thanks to Rosemary Woods. So great. Thank you, Rosemary, always sharing her great pictures. Just a quick update. There is Melissa, which is, of course, has rolled across Jamaica, made landfall as a Category 5. May strengthen again tonight before it makes landfall again in Cuba. Hurricane Hunter aircraft today, boy, they had a rough ride. They dropped severe turbulence when they went through that storm. They moved up and down 600 to 700 feet during a 1 minute stretch while they flew through that storm.
Scary.
But collected some historic data, including recording 893 millibars of central pressure. That cements Melissa as the third most intense hurricane on record in the Atlantic.
Wow.
So Hurricane Hunter's risking it, but of course, they are very, very important for gathering data. There's the next couple of days, which do look quiet ahead of what will be that wet weather and windy weather moving in on Friday as Melissa tracks to our south.
All right, thanks for that, Ryan. Well, crushing a pumpkin, especially a giant one, isn't an easy feat. Pretty good.
Yep.
That was the scene at an annual squishing of the squash at the Oregon Zoo, and these gourds are no match against the stomping force, of course, of an adult elephant.
But 8-year-old Tula 2 hasn't quite gotten the hang of it, so she resorted to kicking around a smaller pumpkin instead. The zoo says one of this year's gourds weighs more than Tula.
The Halloween tradition, which just celebrated its 27th year, allows the animals to play with their treats before making short work of them.
And play they did.
They're having fun.
That's it for us tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.
Good night.